have no bread, then let them eat cake. This quote was stated many years ago by a woman by the name of Marie Antoinette. Now, if you do not know who that is, do not worry, because by the end of my speech, you will be very familiar with her. Today, I'm going to inform you on her early life, her arranged marriage, her time spent at the Palace of Versailles, and how her insensitive quote that I just stated would ultimately lead to her death. Marie was born on November 2nd of 1755. She was raised in Vienna, Austria by her two parents, Holy Roman Emperor Francis I and Maria Theresa. Within Marie's family, there were 15 children, and of these 15 children, 6 of them were her sisters, who were also named Marie. According to Robert Wild, a journalist for a website called .co, he recently published on July 3rd of 2019 that the reason Marie and all of her sisters were named this was to show a sign of devotion to the Virgin Mary. This is because the major religion during the 18th century was the Catholic religion. And also because of this, per custom, Marie spent her hours in school learning about religious subjects rather than the normal math and English that we learn about today. The reason behind this is because the boys were expected to learn the math and English, while the girls were expected to learn the not so serious subjects and stay at home, take care of their husbands, and obey them. Which brings me to my next subject, her arranged marriage. Although, before I tell you about her marriage, I'm going to explain to you the series of events that led up to it. Many years before Marie was ever even born, there was a long 7-year war between Austria and France. Austria and France hated each other, although after several years, the two decided to reconcile their differences and finally become allies. In order to signify this alliance, a marriage was arranged, and this is where Marie comes in. As I stated earlier, Marie's father was Holy Roman Emperor Francis I, which meant that he was the ruler of Austria during this time. The ruler of France during this time was King Louis XV. So a marriage was arranged between Marie and King Louis XV's grandson, Louis Auguste. Upon this arrangement, Marie went to France, where she would meet her husband for the very first time. At just the ages of 14 and 15, Marie and Louis were married on May 16th of 1770. As soon as the two were married, they were expected to consummate their marriage by having a child, and they were expected to do so very quickly. Although, according to Christopher Klein, a historian who writes articles for History.com, stated on August 31st of 2018, it took Marie and Louis 7 years to finally have a child. And it was said the reason behind this is because the two did not like each other. Eventually, Marie would become pregnant, although her husband would become very displeased with her after she gave birth to a daughter. This is because Marie was expected to give birth to a son so that this son could someday become the future heir to the throne of France. A few years after Marie gave birth to her daughter, King Louis XV died, which meant it was now time for Louis Auguste to become King Louis XVI and for Marie to become the Queen of France. Since they were now king and queen, they were expected to move to the Palace of Versailles. The Palace of Versailles was the home to many kings and queens throughout the centuries. According to Owen Jarvis, a Life Science contributor, he published on October 5th of 2017 that the Palace of Versailles was built to impress, and as you can tell from the picture, it did not fail in doing so. Marie was someone who especially loved the palace, and while she stayed there, she partook in an extremely lavish lifestyle. She would buy copious amounts of expensive dresses, shoes, wigs, or makeup. Whatever she wanted, she got. While she lived there, she also threw very large and fancy parties in which she would do a lot of gambling at. So, as you may have guessed it, her spending tendencies cost her husband a lot of money. Her spending problem would eventually become a life-threatening issue for her and her husband. But how, you're probably wondering? Well, there was a lot going on in France during this time that contributed to this. France was suffering economically for several reasons, one of them being the long 7-year war that I mentioned earlier. France contributed a lot of money towards this war, and because of this, racked up a very large amount of debt. So not only did the war cause this great debt, but Marie's spending also contributed to it. Due to the debt, the people of France grew to be very poor, and in order to pay off this debt, a tax was placed on all the goods in France that the French people were expected to pay, and Marie and Louis did not have to pay this tax. This caused the citizens to grow very angry with Marie and Louis because they felt it was unfair that they were suffering while Marie and Louis got to live such a fabulous and extravagant life. It is said when confronted about the issues of the people, she stated her famous quote, "If the people have no bread, then let them eat cake." This showed Marie's inability to comprehend the realities of the misfortunate. She could not grasp the fact that her people had no food, and nor did she care. After this happened, it was evident to the people that Marie and Louis were not going to help their suffrage, and so the people of France decided to revolt against the king and queen. This was the start of the French Revolution. The people of France gathered up their pitchforks and stormed the Palace of Versailles, destroying everything that they possibly could. Although their main goal was to get to Marie and Louis so that they could make them pay for everything that they had done to them. Marie tried to escape the angry mob but failed miserably. She was captured and taken to trial, and once she was at trial, she was convicted of treason. Upon her conviction, she was sentenced to death. And on October 16th of 1793, Marie was executed by guillotine in front of hundreds of angry men and French women. In conclusion, this is a topic that I learned about in my college history class, and it is something that I found to be extremely fascinating. I hope you enjoyed learning about Marie Antoinette, and I hope that the details of her early life, her arranged marriage, her time spent at the Palace of Versailles, and the events that led up to her death fascinated you as much as it does me. Thank you.